Earth's climate is changing in more dangerous ways than we currently understand. At present, our efforts to cure what we call climate change are focused on the removal of excess carbon from the atmosphere. Unfortunately, this will not be enough to fix the problem. And if we do succeed with this effort, it's likely that we will worsen the situation rather than fix it. I am Don Heath. Welcome to Climate Change, Climate Challenge, Part 4 of the Stellar Mechanism. In this segment of my theory, I will examine what is really happening to Earth's climate, as well as what we must do to fix it. As a naturalist, I study all aspects of nature. It has been my goal to understand how this solar system was formed and how the Earth has evolved within it. After a 10-year study, I believe to have answered some very serious questions, including the question of climate change. Some of what I will share today are already known facts, but much will be new discoveries. Discoveries that will give to everyone a better understanding of how the Earth functions, as well as what we must do to save it. After having seen my analysis, it will be up to you to decide if you believe the evidence or not. But there is one thing that I would like you to remember. It is the Earth that is telling you these facts. I have only interpreted the evidence that the Earth has provided. Earth's climate is changing in more dangerous ways than we think we understand. We are told that our use of carbon is responsible for causing a greenhouse effect in the atmosphere. This makes the polar ice caps melt, causing sea levels to rise, and giving us more frequent and volatile weather. Unfortunately, this assessment is not entirely correct. Yes, it is true that Earth's atmosphere is warming due to these greenhouse gases, and yes, this causes more frequent and severe weather. But this is only the very small part of a whole story. We have made a critical error in the assessment of this problem. We are looking at the situation from our own point of view. This means that we are blaming climate change for damages caused to our lives, to our lands, to our finances. But we must step away from our human arrogance and look at the situation from planet Earth's point of view. The Earth is only reacting to damages that it has already sustained, and we must look at the situation as such. Earth is not out to get us. It only knows that there are repairs that need to be made. Unfortunately for us, this equates to a change of its climate. We are told that if we do not stop the climate from changing, the polar ice caps will soon completely disappear, destroying coastlines and displacing millions of people. The truth is actually far, far worse. This is the Earth now. Our planet is covered by 3/4 water. But this is where the Earth is already moving towards, a planet without water. It's hard to recognize, isn't it? Here's a closer look. Can you identify the continents, the oceans, the islands? This is the future of planet Earth. If we do not react right now, during this presentation, I will tell you why this is going to happen to the Earth. I crafted this sculpture because I wanted to see for myself how the Earth's crust has evolved over time. It has given to me an insight into how the solar system was formed, and is the basis of my entire theory, the stellar mechanism. As I already said, Earth is changing in more dangerous ways than we currently understand. By looking from Earth's point of view, we will be able to understand what is happening. Earth's relationship with the sun is where we will find our answers. To put this into perspective, the sun is immense, 1 million times the size of the Earth. If this were the sun, Earth would be as big as a single grain of salt. 1 million Earths can fit inside of the sun. The sun is 93 million miles away from planet Earth. On the scale of this light bulb, that would be about this far apart. The sun's energy travels equally in all directions, but only a tiny fraction of that energy is actually directed towards the Earth. Of that energy directed towards the Earth, much of it is deflected by the Earth's first line of defense, its magnetic field. Even this small amount of energy would be enough to destroy the Earth's surface if it were allowed to reach the planet. But the Earth does not allow this to happen. Earth is a living organism that protects itself with layers of protection. All of these layers must work properly for the Earth to remain healthy. Because Earth's first line of defense does not stop all of the harmful energy delivered from the sun. Two layers called Van Allen belts capture high and low energy particles that pass through the outer barrier of the magnetic field. The Van Allen belts are Earth's second line of defense. But the Van Allen belts as well do not stop all of the sun's harmful energy. The energy that passes through this barrier is what we call visible light, which is ironic since it's invisible. The light that passes this barrier is divided into wavelengths, from infrared to ultraviolet. These waves of light are what reach the Earth's surface, all except for one. Harmful ultraviolet B radiation is intercepted by the Earth's ozone layer. This layer is special. Special because it is created by the very substance that it must defend the Earth against. Ultraviolet radiation enters into Earth's atmosphere and contacts oxygen molecules. These O2 molecules are disintegrated by this contact. This means that the bond that holds the two oxygen atoms together is broken. They are disintegrated. This leaves individual oxygen atoms. These atoms then seek out other molecules or atoms to rebond with. In this case, other O2 molecules. The new bond now creates O3, or ozone. The ozone layer is Earth's third line of defense. At this point, all of the sun's harmful energy has been neutralized by these primary defenses. But there are still several layers of defense that must remain intact for the Earth to remain protected from the sun. The atmosphere itself protects the Earth. Made mostly of nitrogen and oxygen, the atmosphere is where the cooling process takes place. The heat energy received from the sun must be countered, otherwise it would be too much for the Earth to handle. And the exchange of water between the atmosphere and the surface keeps the land surfaces hydrated, thus keeping it cool. This hydration provokes the growth of vegetation, again cooling the land. And this vegetation provides oxygen to the atmosphere, once again cooling the planet. Oxygen is the most important of these inner defenses. The Earth's crust needs two forms of oxygen to live healthily. One mixed with nitrogen to form the air, and two integrated with hydrogen to form water. These two uses of oxygen allow the Earth's surface to reproduce all of the organisms found on its surface. All of these systems must work properly and together for the Earth to have an optimum protection from the sun. Unfortunately, they are not working properly, and when one part breaks down, the others must compensate for this failure. When this happens, we perceive it as climate change. The problem is that we must identify which part of the problem is causing the chain reaction. At present, we have identified excess carbon in our atmosphere as the root of the problem. And yes, it is partially to blame. But unfortunately, this is only a very small part of the whole problem. Removing excess carbon from the atmosphere will not, I repeat, will not stop the climate from changing, simply because excess carbon is not the root of climate change. To find the root, we must continue to look at Earth's solar defenses. So where are Earth's defenses weakened? We know that the ozone layer has been severely damaged. There are massive holes over the poles. And the layer itself is very thin. This allows harmful UVB radiation to pass through to the planet's surface. As the sun's energy is deflected by the magnetic field, some of that energy rides along its outer edge and is directed onto the Arctic Circle. Since the field circulates around the planet in this direction, the damage to the Arctic is more prominent than anywhere else on the planet. There is no CO2 at the Arctic. Therefore, another substance must be responsible for the damage. Radiation is destroying the North Polar ice cap. Radiation is one of the three forms of heat. This heat is responsible for what is believed to be the most dangerous part of climate change, the rise of sea levels from melting ice. That having been said, UV radiation is not the root of climate change. But since we know that the weakened ozone layer is allowing UV to reach the surface, the question is, what is weakening the ozone layer? The answer lies with how ozone is created. Most people believe that ozone is just there, static and inflexible. But this is not true. Ozone is created by a reaction between oxygen from the Earth and ultraviolet radiation from the sun. And since the sun's energy is constant, we must deduce that there is not enough oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. Earth is suffering from oxygen deprivation. Most people will not believe what I just said because we live our lives every day breathing what we believe to be normally. But oxygen plays a far greater role on Earth than just allowing us to breathe. Earth uses oxygen to protect itself from ultraviolet radiation. This is the primary role of oxygen on this planet. 7 billion humans also share this same oxygen, not only with each other, but also with every animal and insect on the planet. This alone extracts an enormous amount of oxygen from the air. And when you combine the two together, there is simply not enough oxygen to do both effectively. The reason that there is not enough is simple. There are not enough trees on the planet to produce the needed quantities. This is the catalyst. This is the root of climate change. The removal of trees from the Earth has devastated the atmospheric balance, a balance that had taken the Earth billions of years to achieve. Now we are seeing the beginnings of the effect that it has. As I already stated, Earth is only trying to repair damage that it has already sustained. We perceive this as climate change. Increased heat, melting ice, excess liquid water, higher evaporation rates, increased precipitation. Planet Earth is trying to do something. It's trying to regrow its forests. There is only one problem. We remove trees much faster than planet Earth can grow them. For years, we have all heard that deforestation is harmful to the environment. Now we have proof that this practice is the root of climate change. The Earth is telling all of us, and in no uncertain terms, to stop immediately this practice or suffer the consequences. When I say the word deforestation, you probably think that I'm referring to our recent practices, say over the last 200 or 300 years. But I am not. Humans have been removing trees since the advent of civilization. In fact, it is one of the bases of civilization itself. For more than 7,000 years, for more than 7,000 years we have been doing this to the planet. Agriculture has always been the greatest excuse for removing trees out of our way. But over the millennia, there have also been many others. The practice has only increased while spreading all over the world with the increase of the world's human population. We use it in countless applications. The fact is that throughout civilization, timber is by far our greatest commodity. I myself have a home that is filled with wood and paper products. No matter where you go or what you do, we are all surrounded by it. And herein lies the problem. We have never truly understood the role that forests play on the earth. The time has come for us to understand that we need them. They do not need us. This map shows what remains of Earth's forests. This map is 10 years old. There are less trees now than there were 10 years ago. They are literally becoming an endangered species. There was a time when the land was covered with forests. The oxygen levels then were much higher than the 21% of today. Earth has gone through several catastrophes in its 4.6 billion year life. With each of these, it has recovered from devastation. One example is Earth's greatest catastrophe. 250 million years ago, nearly all life was extinguished on this planet. The cause of the destruction is still in debate, but what is certain is that it took the Earth 30 million years to recover. And when it did, a new era had emerged, the age of the dinosaurs. But in cases like this, the recovery was not without consequences. Part of those consequences were the permanent removal of forest from certain zones on the planet. At the advent of civilization, these zones had been permanently stripped of all of their vegetation. Here, in areas here, all of these areas, vegetation is now gone. It is humans who are responsible for removing the rest, leaving only this. And we continue to remove them every single day. But forests are not the only source of oxygen on the planet. Tiny creatures called phytoplankton live within the oceans. They release oxygen into the atmosphere in much the same way as trees. And they are responsible for 50% of Earth's oxygen. Here as well. Here's a very large phytoplankton bloom, releasing oxygen into the atmosphere. These two forces, forests and phytoplankton, combine to oxygenate Earth's atmosphere with 21% O2, which is filtered through 78% nitrogen, or N2. But the 21% is only an illusion. To understand this, let's look at the atmosphere. Since oxygen is produced at the surface, this is where the greatest concentrations are. And we know that the higher into the atmosphere you go, the thinner the air becomes. This simply means that the higher you go, the less oxygen there is. The oxygen layer is shrinking. Over time, and with the removal of Earth's forests, the oxygen layer has retracted, coming closer to the planet. This is extremely dangerous for both the planet and for us. Planet Earth is trying desperately to heal itself, but we are not allowing it to do so. I have shown you that what we call climate change is actually Earth's way of repairing its forests, which will produce more oxygen. Which in turn will repair the ozone layer. Remember, ozone is not static. It is constantly recycling itself. We know that oxygen becomes thinner at altitude, and we know that the reaction between O2 and ultraviolet produce O3, or ozone. But the oxygen must rise into the atmosphere in order to allow for a healthy ozone layer. The oxygen must rise as high as 50 miles into the upper atmosphere. The weather system makes this possible. Weather is not only rain and snow. Weather also includes atmospheric pressure. In areas of high pressure, the air is weighed down to the ground. Moisture is not allowed to rise into cloud formations. We perceive this as good weather, sunny and either warm or cool depending on where you are and what season it is. Low pressure systems are the opposite. The air has less weight. Moisture is allowed to rise into clouds and eventually precipitation. But low pressure systems also carry oxygen with them into the upper atmosphere. This is Earth's way of protecting itself from UV radiation. These systems can be small or large. They exist to hydrate the land and to oxygenate the upper atmosphere. They can be very intense, forming into tropical storms and into tornadoes. When the vortex forms, it literally siphons oxygen from the surface into the upper atmosphere, placing the oxygen where it needs to be to intercept the UV radiation. At present, we are seeing an increase in these storms. This means that Earth is doing everything it can to repair itself. When this happens, we perceive it as climate change. The damage that has already been caused has been considerable, and many lives have already been lost. It is said that our use of carbon is the driving force behind the atmosphere warming. And yes, in essence, it is true. But it is not the mere fact that this carbon is in the atmosphere that is making it warmer. This carbon is being heated by the ultraviolet radiation. UV rays react with whatever they come into contact with. And in this case, the excess carbon that's in our atmosphere. With this layer now choked with radiation, the heat energy received by the sun cannot escape back out into space. It is trapped by the CO2 UV layer that is causing the greenhouse effect. The bottom line is that UV rays are responsible for dangerous situations on the Earth. For example, these are normal everyday sunglasses. You can find them in stores almost anywhere. The lenses are coated with a substance that protect our eyes from harm. And this sticker, UV certified, tells me that. They block the UV rays, thus protecting our eyes from harm. And this is a bottle of suntan lotion. It gives a protection called SPF, or Sun Protection Factor. You put it on your skin when you want to spend time outdoors in the sun. These are now everyday products, so there can be no dispute that ultraviolet radiation plays a role in our daily lives. The problem is that we have become complacent, thinking that we are safe from UV radiation. But I assure you, we are not. Remember, ultraviolet is solar radiation. Increased heat, tropical storms, tornadoes, mudslides, floods, these are things that we are seeing happen every day around the world. We equate the damage into monetary values, but there is a part of climate change that we have never discussed, simply because we cannot see it happening. Not yet. As I told you before, this is the future of the Earth if we do not replace the forests. A planet without water. You are thinking that this is impossible. Impossible because the sea levels are rising. And yes, they are. But yet again, this is only an illusion. The truth is that Earth's water supply is disintegrating right before our eyes. Yet we are unable to see this happening because we are being blinded by the factors that we can see. But it is the loss of Earth's water supply that is by far the most dangerous aspect of climate change. It is the end game. Earth is a water world. It is covered by, 3/4 of it is covered by ice or water. Not to mention the 13,000 cubic kilometers that are in the Earth's atmosphere as vapor. We believe this water has always been here in the same quantities as now. But in the past, there was certainly more than there is now. We find it hard to believe that the planet has not always looked as it does today. The truth is, the Earth has only looked like this for a very short period of time. The changes that the Earth has gone through in its 4.6 billion year life are many. In fact, it's changing right now. Its water supply is vital to its life. That's why it fights so hard to protect it. This water supply is not infinite. It is a finite resource. Once it is gone, it can never come back. In this demonstration, I have shown you how planet Earth protects itself from the sun. These defenses are there for one reason: to protect its water supply. But because of us, it is failing. Less forests produce less oxygen. Less oxygen produces less ozone. And less ozone allows more UV radiation to pass through to the surface. And that UV radiation is right now attacking the Earth's surface all over the world. UV not only disintegrates the O2 molecule, but UV also disintegrates the H2O molecule. This action is Earth's last line of defense against the dangers of the sun. When UV disintegrates the H2O molecule, it frees the oxygen atom from the ocean or any other water source to integrate itself into the atmosphere, thus increasing the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. But it does this at the expense of Earth's water supply. These H2O molecules are gone forever. This is Earth's last effort to protect itself from the sun. This in compensation for the lack of oxygen provided by what remains of Earth's forests. It is for this reason that recently the ozone layer seems to be repairing itself. Again, at the expense of Earth's water supply. Earth will continue to extract oxygen from its oceans and any other water source that ultraviolet radiation comes into contact with, thus reducing the amount of H2O on the planet's surface. Here are some examples of bodies of water on planet Earth that are right now disappearing before our eyes. This is Lake Urmia in Iran. You can see the difference in these two bodies of water. How much water has already been lost from here to here. This was in 1985. In the next picture, you will see what this looked like in 2010. It is currently at 10% of its total capacity. But this is not from evaporation. This is a product of H2O molecules disintegrating from exposure to UV radiation. Next, we have Lake Chad in northern Africa, probably the most well-known example of a disappearing water source. Here in the 1960s is what it looked like. It had already lost a considerable amount of water. Now it is only at 5% of its total capacity, and it will soon completely vanish from the face of the earth forever. In Mexico, Guadalajara, Lake Chapala is Mexico's largest body of water. These images span the 15 years between 1986 and 2001. A remarkable change. Lake Aral in Central Asia was in the 1960s like this. You will be able to see exactly how much water is gone from this as you look at it now. This water source will be gone within a matter of years. Now to Australia. This is Lake Disappointment. This is by far the most frightening example that I have seen in my research. In the 2 weeks that span February 22nd to March 4th of 2013, this lake lost this much water. Now to America. Lake Mead in Nevada is the primary water reservoir for Southern California. At present, it is only at 1/3 of its total capacity, and it is the lowest level since the Hoover Dam was completed in 1942. This is for one reason, that Southern California remains in a drought today. This is not the only reason, but this is one of the reasons why California remains in drought. These are examples of H2O disintegration due to UV exposure. If we do not stop our deforestation processes right now, the Earth's surface will soon die, both from lack of oxygen and water. These are the two most vital substances that the Earth needs to live. But we must not only stop removing trees from the planet, we must replace as many of them as we can, and that as fast as possible. If we are able to do this, not only will we be helping the Earth to repair itself, we will find that we are able to control Earth's climate, giving us optimum circumstances for life on this planet. If we are not able to do this, we will lose this planet in a very short period of time, simply because we do not respect nature. Making the planet healthy is strictly up to us. The Earth is 4.6 billion years old, and in 7,000 years, we have driven it to the point where it is now rebelling against us. Soon, it will reach the point of no return. And if this happens, we will be responsible for the failure of this world, the only place in the entire universe where we are certain there is life. Instead, we have an opportunity and an obligation to help the Earth to repair itself. Not only because this is what the Earth needs, but because our population is steadily increasing. Every day, approximately 350,000 humans are born into this world. By the year 2050, there will be 9 billion inhabitants. All of those people will need homes to live in, food to eat, water to drink, and oxygen to breathe. By starting the regeneration process now, we will be preparing the planet for the 9 billion who will be here by 2050 and the 12 billion who will be here by 2100. If we do not do this, we will be responsible for our own failure. Simply put, once the water is gone, it's all over. Today I have spoken about how dangerous UV radiation is to planet Earth, and how 7,000 years of deforestation has triggered a chain reaction that is now allowing this danger in. We have been told that we can stabilize the climate by removing excess carbon from the atmosphere. Although it is true that the atmosphere is warming and that excess carbon is partially to blame, we must not focus all our efforts on the removal of these gases, because if we do, the UV damage will only accelerate. We must attack the problem on both fronts, replacing the forest as well as the removal of the carbon. If we remove the excess carbon, without repairing the ozone layer by replacing the forests, there will be absolutely nothing to stop ultraviolet radiation from reaching the planet's surface. We will be under constant bombardment from UV rays. The Earth's water source will disintegrate, and the planet will soon look like this. But we already know what this looks like, because we know what Mars looks like, and we know what Venus looks like. If we do replace Earth's forests, we will be able to control Earth's climate. This will give us optimum circumstances for life on this planet. My name is Don Heath. I would like to thank you for witnessing Climate Change, Climate Challenge, Part 4 of the Stellar Mechanism. Our planet is at the beginning of a premature death. This is being caused only by us. We have an opportunity and an obligation to help the Earth to repair itself. My only question to you is, what are we going to do about this problem?